The night I found out my son had thrown a $12,000 birthday dinner in my name and didn't invite me, I was wiping crumbs off a plastic booth at the diner where I cleaned tables after hours, just trying to make it through the last shift of the week without my knees giving out. I spotted a gold-trimmed receipt someone left behind, and when I read, "Happy 65th birthday, Evelyn Foster, private ballroom event, full catering paid," I froze. That's my name, my birthday. But I spent it alone eating canned soup in front of the local news. That was the moment I realized something wasn't just wrong, it was cruel. I'm glad you're here. Stick with me until the end, because this story, it's not just about betrayal. It's about what a woman does when the people she raised decide she's no longer worth a seat at the table. Comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far the truth can travel. If this is your first time on the channel, welcome. I've got a story to tell. And if you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or just quietly fighting to survive, then you'll feel every word of it. My name is Evelyn Foster, and I've been working double shifts in Lima, Ohio ever since I lost my husband 9 years ago. I used to think the worst part was missing him at night. But what I didn't expect was how quickly our son Mason would forget where he came from. That boy used to run barefoot through our backyard chasing fireflies while I sat on the porch with lemonade and aching feet. Now he wears suits I couldn't afford in a lifetime and lives in a gated neighborhood where people whisper if your shoes aren't leather. But I never asked him for a dime, not once, until I realized he'd been using me not as a mother, but as a tax deduction. And all it took was one forgotten receipt, one careless moment to open a door I didn't even know was closed. I stared at that receipt for a long time, long after my shift ended, long after the diner emptied out, and the night manager turned off half the lights. I sat alone in that booth, surrounded by the faint smell of grease and lemon cleaner, holding that slip of glossy paper like it was a letter from someone who'd died. $12,000 on a private ballroom, catered steak dinner, champagne bar, printed name cards, and a custom ice sculpture shaped like the number 65. My birthday used like a prop, and I hadn't even gotten a phone call. The next day, I must have rewritten the confrontation in my head 100 times on my way to Mason's house. I didn't want to fight, I just wanted the truth. But the moment Harper opened the door barefoot in a silk robe with her perfect blonde hair swept into a bun that somehow looked both messy and expensive, I knew I'd never be welcome in that home. "Oh, Evelyn," she said, like I'd shown up trying to sell vacuum cleaners. "We weren't expecting you." I told her I found the receipt. I asked why they'd throw a party in my name and never invite me. She smiled, not apologetically, not nervously, just that tight, condescending smile people use when they're pretending not to laugh in your face. "It was a charity write-off," she said, not even blinking. "Mason's company allows tax benefits for family-focused philanthropy. So we threw a celebration in your honor. Relax, we even used one of your Facebook pictures on the slideshow." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. A slideshow of me. At a party I wasn't at. "It's not like you would have felt comfortable there," she continued, already turning back toward her living room. "Anyway, you should be grateful. Mason did it all for your legacy. You're basically part of our brand now." My legacy, my name, my son's brand. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to. I looked past her into the house, into the polished marble floors, the glowing chandeliers, the towering ceilings that probably cost more than my entire building. And there was Mason, standing by the fireplace, sipping espresso from a little glass cup. Like he didn't even recognize the woman who used to pack his lunch in sandwich bags and rub his back when he had nightmares. "Mom," he said cautiously, as if I were some disgruntled stranger showing up with a complaint. Harper explained everything. "It's not a big deal. It was just a gesture. People loved it. And frankly, you never ask us for anything, so we thought you wouldn't mind." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I never asked. I whispered, my voice catching in my throat because I never thought I had to. Mason sighed, looked at Harper, then back at me. Look, you're making this more emotional than it needs to be. You're not even struggling that bad, right? You've got your little apartment. You're still working. He said that like it was something to be proud of. Like me, cleaning gum off diner booths at 64 was a victory, not a last resort. And Harper. She laughed, actually laughed, then walked over and dropped something into my purse. Here, she said. A gift card to Dillard's. They've got a senior discount on Tuesdays. Treat yourself. That was when something inside me broke. Not shattered, no. Just snapped loose, like a chain, finally reaching the end of its tension. I walked out without another word, not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew they wouldn't hear it. Not really. Not behind their walls and wine tastings and glassed-in lives where people like me are decorations, footnotes, or inconveniences. I cried in my car. Not pretty movie tears crying. I mean the kind of crying where you grip the steering wheel and your chest shakes and your body makes sounds you didn't know it could make. I wasn't crying over a party. I was mourning something else. The loss of who I thought Mason still was. The loss of the illusion that maybe I still mattered to him beyond being a character he could use for his career story. I drove home that night and opened the fridge, 1/2 gallon of milk, 2 eggs, a wrinkled apple. I sat down in the dark kitchen with the Dillard's card still in my hand. Treat yourself, Harper had said. I could almost hear her voice dripping with that fake warmth. That's when I realized this wasn't just carelessness. It was control. Strategic, calculated, cold control. They'd written me out of their lives, but kept my name alive on their taxes, in their stories, in their curated social posts, because it benefited them. My poverty gave their wealth a storyline. My silence gave their image dignity. And in that moment I swore to myself that I might be poor, but I would not be pitiful. I would not be their excuse anymore. They wanted a brand. Then they'd get one. Just not the one they expected. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay on my creaky couch, listening to the hum of the fridge, the occasional drip from the bathroom faucet, and the echo of Harper's voice in my head. You're part of our brand now. That phrase clung to me like a stain I couldn't wash off. For a few days, I went quiet. Not because I gave up, but because I was thinking, planning, watching. The kind of stillness people mistake for defeat, when really it's calculation. I started by calling Trina from church. She's not just kind, she's a CPA, and once did my taxes for free after my old preparer passed away. I didn't tell her everything, not at first. I simply asked if someone claimed to support an elderly parent financially, but wasn't really doing it. Would that show up anywhere? Trina didn't hesitate. If they're itemizing, yes. There'd be claims, dependent care credits, elder housing deductions, maybe even charitable write-offs if they disguised it as a foundation expense. She paused. Is someone doing that with your name? Evelyn. And that was the moment I knew I wasn't crazy. It wasn't just a party. It was a pattern. Over the next 2 weeks, I brought her every scrap of paperwork. I had old birthday cards, where Mason mentioned helping out a copy of the receipt I'd kept from the diner. Even a screenshot of a now-deleted Facebook post from Harper's account, showing their family foundation's tribute to maternal strength, with my picture underneath a caption that read, "She sacrificed everything so we could thrive." That sentence made my stomach twist every time I read it. I'd sacrificed, yes, but they'd twisted my life into performance art. Trina's brow furrowed deeper with each page. Evelyn, she finally said, this isn't just unethical. It could be criminal, depending on what they reported and how they structured it. And if they're claiming you as a dependent, or using your image for non-profit deductions while you're still working double shifts to afford food, there's a serious case for financial elder exploitation here. I let that word, exploitation, sit in the air. It was harsh cold and unfortunately accurate. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something unfamiliar blooming in my chest clarity. For years I had believed that love, real love, was silent. That being a good mother meant asking for nothing, needing nothing, being proud from a distance. But Harper and Mason had turned my silence into an asset. They didn't want me proud, they wanted me invisible. But invisible doesn't mean powerless. So I got to work. Every spare moment between shifts, I took notes. I found public property records. Turns out Mason and Harper had listed a portion of their home's guest house as in-kind care space for aging parent, even though I'd never stepped foot inside it. I called the county office under the guise of verifying my own records and learned they'd even filed for state elder care tax credits over 3 consecutive years. They used my name, my age, and my supposed declining mobility as justification. Declining mobility. I'm the one scrubbing diner floors at 11 p.m. The irony made me laugh out loud in the break room, until Gloria, one of the servers, peeked in and asked if I was okay. I told her I was just tired, but really I was cracking open. Something dormant in me was waking up, not bitterness, but resolve. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I wanted the truth. I wanted every dollar, every email, every smile they gave at charity galas, while pretending to be caring for a struggling parent to come back and haunt them. I wanted receipts, real ones, not the kind left on ballroom tables. One night after a long shift, I sat in the laundry room of my building next to the buzzing dryer and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. It belonged to Miguel Reyes, a local reporter who once did a profile on the church's food pantry where I used to volunteer. I remembered how gently he'd spoken to the older folks, how he'd stayed after interviews to help carry boxes. When he picked up, and I explained why I was calling, there was a pause. Then, "You know what, Evelyn? I think it's time people heard your side of the story." That was the night the tide began to shift. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I didn't storm their house. I made coffee, opened my notebook, and listed every lie told in my name. I wasn't planning an attack. I was building a case. Quietly, methodically. I knew Harper would never see it coming. She'd always assumed I was too tired, too meek, too dependent to ever fight back. What she forgot is that mothers don't stop surviving just because someone decided they're no longer useful. Some of us are just waiting for the right moment to rise. It started with an envelope. No return address, just my name, Evelyn Foster, typed on a stark white label. Inside a formal letter, thick paper and language so polished it cut like glass. "Cease and desist," it read, accusing me of slanderous behavior, of intentionally damaging the reputations and business partnerships of Mr. and Mrs. Mason Caldwell. Harper. It reeked of her smug, legalistic, sanitized cruelty wrapped in polite font. I stared at it while sitting on the bus home from the laundromat, my hands shaking so hard the driver asked if I needed help. I didn't. At least not the kind he could give. That night, I called Trina and read the letter aloud to her. She wasn't surprised. "It's a bluff," she said, "but an aggressive one. They know you're closing in and they're scared." I wanted to believe that, but it didn't feel like fear from them. It felt like war. And the worst part was Mason, my son. His name was at the top of that letter too, right next to hers. There was no note inside saying, "Sorry, Mum," no warning call, just signatures. My own child had put his name on a threat against me. That hurt in a place deeper than betrayal. I thought about him as a little boy, how he used to run through the kitchen barefoot, leaving muddy footprints on my clean floors, laughing like the world couldn't touch him. And I'd always let it go. I let a lot go. Too much, maybe. I didn't raise him to become cruel, but I did raise him to believe I would always forgive. Maybe that was my mistake. Still, I pressed forward. Miguel had been digging into their financial trail for weeks now, and he was starting to hit roadblocks. Mason's employer declined to speak. Harper's PR firm ghosted his requests. But Miguel wasn't easily rattled. He kept going even when someone slashed his car tire outside the office. Could have been random, he said over coffee at the church rec hall. But I've reported on gang violence and political corruption and never had a problem. It's funny. Only time I get a threat is when I cover rich suburban families misusing elder tax credits. He laughed, but there was steel in his voice. That's what made me trust him. But not everyone was on my side. Word started spreading through church, subtle at first. Sister Baird didn't invite me to Bible study. Someone else made a comment about family drama going public during potluck. Harper was using her connections, quietly poisoning the well, painting me as the bitter old woman trying to destroy her son's reputation out of jealousy. And part of me started to believe it. One night, after my second shift, I stared into the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman in it. My skin looked thin and grey, my shoulders hunched. My hands were swollen from scrubbing and folding and lifting. Was I just being spiteful? I asked myself that more times than I care to admit. But the answer always came back clear: no. This wasn't spite. This was self-defense against erasure, against being used, against being cast aside while others profited from my story. Still, my body was wearing out. My joints ached more. My eyes stung every night. And then came the sidewalk. It was a Wednesday morning. I'd barely slept, and I tripped over a curb on my way to the diner. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't fall hard. But when I sat down on the bench to catch my breath, my chest tightened. For a minute, I thought maybe this is it. Maybe this is how I go. Alone on a grey street, while the people who claimed to care about me argued over their tax write-offs. A man walking his dog stopped, concerned. He offered to call someone. I waved him off. But something in his kindness reminded me not everyone in this world uses people like wallpaper. Some still see you. Miguel came by that afternoon with new documents. He'd found proof Harper had registered their family foundation under a name that included mine as an honorary co-founder without my knowledge. They'd even used a photo of me smiling in a floral dress from years ago, labelled Matriarch Evelyn the Inspiration. I felt sick. They made me into a mascot, I whispered. Miguel nodded solemnly. But mascots don't speak. You're not their story, Evelyn. You're your own. That night I pulled the cease and desist letter out again. I held it over my stove and watched it burn. Not out of rage, but out of ritual, a funeral for the version of me that would have been silenced. From that day forward, I told myself, if they want to fight, fine. But it'll be on my terms. No yelling, no drama, just truth. Just receipts. Because nothing terrifies liars more than a quiet woman with evidence and nothing left to lose. They didn't know I was coming. That was the best part. The invitations for the Caldwell Community Impact Brunch went out weeks ago, Harper's newest event, complete with a champagne buffet press coverage and a slideshow titled Generations of Grace-Honoring Family Legacies. I saw it announced in the newspaper 2 days before, and I knew that was it. That was the day I'd stopped being a footnote. I didn't even RSVP, I just showed up. I wore the same blue dress I'd worn to Mason's college graduation, still clean, still sharp, a little tighter around the waist. But it carried the weight of everything I'd done for him. I walked through the glass double doors of the Civic Center with a folder tucked under my arm and a fire in my chest. No more diner uniform, no more bowed head. Inside the room glowed with warm lighting and polite laughter. People clinked glasses and complimented Harper on her vision. And there she was, at the podium, in a champagne-coloured jumpsuit and heels that probably cost more than my month's rent, beaming at the crowd. "We're here to celebrate the legacy of care," she purred. and how family forms the foundation for everything we achieve. My picture flashed on the screen behind her. Not current me, no, that wouldn't suit her narrative. It was me from years ago in a garden holding a pie with flour on my cheek. The caption read, "Evelyn Foster, the silent strength behind our family." I stepped forward, then slow but steady, and a hush fell like a dropped glass. Someone turned, then another. Then Harper saw me. Her smile faltered. Her eyes widened, but only for a split second. She recovered fast, leaned into the mic, and said too brightly, "Oh, look, everyone, Evelyn's here. Let's give her a round of applause." So unexpected I didn't clap. I didn't smile. I walked up to the foot of the stage and set my folder on the nearest table. "You're right," I said loudly, clearly. "I am unexpected, because you never imagined I'd find out what you've been doing with my name, did you?" A ripple ran through the room. Harper's grip on the podium tightened. I opened the folder and pulled out the paper's copies of their foundation filings, screenshots of my image used in tax exemption requests, even a notarized county record where they'd claimed to be providing in-home elder care. I held them up one by one, my voice unwavering. "This woman," I said, pointing to Harper and my son, who I raised with my hands and my back, and every sleepless night I survived, have been using my identity to build their brand. They've claimed me as a dependent. They've built a fake charity honoring me, all while I worked 2 jobs just to eat. And not once did they invite me to sit at their table. Gasps. A few people stood. A man in a navy blazer whispered something into a reporter's ear. Someone else started filming on their phone. Harper's eyes darted, calculating. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, the microphone picking up the edge in her voice. "My mother-in-law has been going through some confusion. This is not the time or place." "Then when is the time I cut in? Because every time I called, you were busy. Every birthday you sent gift cards and charity receipts. You told people I was proud and private, but I was just alone. You told people I was cared for, but I was scrubbing toilets for minimum wage while you toasted my name with champagne." Mason wasn't on stage. He was by the wall, stiff in his suit, pale and sweating. I looked him dead in the eyes. "You knew," I said. "Maybe not all the details. Maybe not every form Harper filed. But you knew enough. And you stayed quiet." He didn't answer. He looked at the floor. Silence fell again, thick and hot. Then Miguel, yes, my Miguel stepped forward from the back of the room. He was wearing a press badge. He cleared his throat and spoke just loud enough for everyone to hear. "My name is Miguel Reyes. I'm a journalist with Midwest Integrity Weekly, and Ms. Foster's claims are not unfounded. We've independently verified them, and we'll be running a full piece this weekend, including copies of tax filings and county records." Harper's face cracked, then not fully, but enough. Her jaw clenched. Her eyes turned hard and sharp, like broken glass. She tried to speak again, but this time people weren't listening. They were whispering. Some were leaving. One of the event organizers came up and gently took the mic from her hand. "We'll take a short break," she mumbled. But the damage was done. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply gathered my folder, nodded to Miguel, and walked back down the center aisle as people parted like the Red Sea. It was the first time in years I'd felt taller than 5'3". The first time I didn't apologize for taking up space. When I got outside, I didn't rush. I sat on a nearby bench and let the winter sun hit my face. I could hear my heart pounding, not with panic, but with power. Real, earned, unshakable power. Not because I humiliated anyone, but because I'd finally told the truth. And this time, everyone heard it. The story spread faster than I could have imagined. 2 days after the brunch, Miguel's article went live, and the fallout hit like a Midwestern thunderstorm, quiet skies 1 minute, then absolute chaos. The piece was titled, "Branding a Mother: How One Ohio Family Built a Foundation on Fraud," and it didn't hold back. Every lie Harper and Mason had woven into their perfectly curated lives unraveled in print. The charitable deductions, the fake in-home care records, even screenshots of emails between Harper and her assistant one where she joked, "As long as the old woman stays poor and invisible, the IRS won't blink." That one hit people hard. I knew it would. The community didn't rally around them. They recoiled. Invitations to board meetings vanished. The PR firm Harper worked for scrubbed her bio within 24 hours. Mason's company announced a review of internal ethics compliance and quietly placed him on indefinite leave. Nobody defended them, not publicly. And still not once did either of them call to apologize. Not once. Instead, Mason sent me an email. A short one. No "Dear Mom," no warmth. Just, "I'm sorry for how things unfolded. I never meant to hurt you. I hope someday you'll understand." Understand what exactly? That he let his wife use my image like a fundraising puppet. That he looked the other way while I worked 14-hour shifts just so he could take philanthropic tax breaks and post pictures of me holding pies. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because for once, silence was power. Meanwhile, the IRS opened a formal audit. Harper was hit first back taxes interest and a federal fraud investigation into misused non-profit status. She tried to spin it, of course. She posted a carefully written clarification on social media about miscommunication and a desire to honor her husband's hard-working mother. The comments section turned on her. Fast. "Honor doesn't look like tax evasion," one person wrote. "Try paying your mother-in-law's rent next time," said another. Within a week, the foundation was dissolved. Their mansion went on the market. Their reputations, at least locally, were shattered. And me, I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. It wasn't revenge that made me breathe easier. It was the return of my truth, my name, my control. But even as things fell apart for them, something else was happening to me, something quieter and far more surprising. I started receiving letters. Not threats, thank you notes. Handwritten cards from women in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, saying things like, "I thought I was the only one who felt erased by my own kids." One woman wrote, "You reminded me that it's not too late to stand up." I read every single one. Some I kept in a shoebox under my bed. One Sunday after church, Trina pulled me aside. "There's a group forming," she said. "We're calling it the Unclaimed Women. We meet once a month, share stories, help each other with finances, legal stuff. It's small now, but growing fast. And they want you to speak. Me. Speak." At first I said no. What did I know about speeches? I still fold my grocery bags into tiny triangles to make them last longer. I still patch holes in my socks instead of buying new ones. But then I thought, maybe that's exactly why they want me. Not because I'm perfect, but because I survived. Because I didn't let shame, age, or exhaustion stop me from telling the truth. So I said yes. And at that first meeting, when I stood in front of a dozen women and told them what Harper and Mason did, I saw something in their eyes I hadn't seen in years. Fire. Reflection. Recognition. Like they'd been waiting for permission to feel angry. And now they had it. Still, the hardest moment came a month later. A knock on my door. I opened it, and there he was. Mason. Standing on my porch, no tie, no polished shoes, just jeans and a coat that didn't quite fit right. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just standing taller. "Can I come in?" he asked. I didn't answer at first, just stared. The last time he stood here, he was moving me into this tiny apartment after I could no longer afford my old house. Back then, he called it downsizing. I called it disappearing. I finally stepped aside. We sat at the small kitchen table I'd bought second-hand. I didn't offer him coffee. I waited. I didn't know the full extent of what Harper was doing, he said. But I knew enough, and I didn't stop it. He paused, swallowed. You gave up everything for me. I should have protected you. I didn't. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just asked, why didn't you call not once? He looked down, because I knew if I heard your voice, I'd have to face what I'd become. There it was, the real apology, not the email, not the corporate speak. Just a broken son who finally saw the mother behind the myth. I didn't forgive him, not fully, not yet. But I told him this. If you want to fix what you broke, don't start by saying sorry. Start by showing up. Every week, every call, every holiday. Not because it looks good, but because I matter to you even when no one's watching. He nodded. Okay, I will. And then he left. And I closed the door, not on him, but on the version of me who waited to be chosen. That woman's gone. I'm not waiting anymore. 18 months later, I no longer wake up to the sound of a buzzing laundromat clock-in machine or sore knees begging me to stop. I wake up to birdsong drifting through the open windows of a modest yellow cottage just outside Marietta, Georgia, surrounded by tall oaks and a porch swing. I bought with my own money cash, no loans, no permission. I moved here, after everything settled, after the foundation shut down and the last audit cleared, after Harper moved out of state, and Mason. Well, he kept his promise. 1 call a week. Sometimes short, sometimes longer. Always real. He doesn't talk about Harper much. I don't ask. Our relationship now isn't built on guilt or performance. It's built on deliberate choice. 1 Sunday, phone call at a time. He's learning. I am too. I joined the local art centre, took up ceramics, even made a little mug that says, visible and vivid, a private joke, a private truth. Once a week, I meet with a group of women at the community centre. Widows, divorced women, some who were never married, but all of us with one thing in common: we gave more than we received. Now we're learning to receive again, not gifts, not apologies, but time, dignity, rest. Sometimes we just sit in silence and drink coffee. Other times we trade recipes or swap stories about how we were told to be grateful for crumbs. One woman, Beverly, said something at our last meeting that stuck with me. We weren't just forgotten, she said. We were filed away, like old paperwork nobody wanted to look at, but everyone still profited from. That hit hard, because that was me too. Harper didn't want me in her life, she just wanted to leverage my image. Mason didn't want to hurt me, but he didn't protect me either. And for a long time, I thought that meant I wasn't worth protecting. But I was wrong. Worth doesn't come from who sees you. It comes from what you survive without being seen. And then what you choose to do when you finally are. These days, I spend more time laughing than crying. I planted tomatoes in the spring and cursed the squirrels when they got to them first. I have a friend now, his name is Walter, from the hardware store. He's gentle, slow to speak, and brings me peaches when they're in season. We haven't defined what we are, and maybe we never will. But I know this, I feel seen. Not managed, not pitied. Seen. Last week I received a package in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting right away. It was Harper's. Inside was a letter, no apology. Just a short message that read, "You made your point. I hope you're satisfied." I laughed. Not out of spite, but because she still doesn't get it. This was never about satisfaction. It was about restoration. About no longer walking through life like a background character in my own story. I didn't destroy her. I didn't sue her. I didn't burn bridges. I simply stood on mine after she tried to flood it. And I let people see me. for who I really was, for the strength I'd always carried but kept quiet about. I didn't need revenge. I needed renewal, and I got it. Not all at once, not wrapped in ribbon, but piece by piece through truth, through quiet fury, through faith that I was never as invisible as they made me feel. If you've made it this far, thank you. Maybe you've lived through something similar. Maybe someone told you that your suffering was necessary, or that your silence was classy, or that needing help was somehow a flaw. But I'm here to tell you, you deserve to be heard. You deserve rest. You deserve to be more than a line on someone else's spreadsheet. And the people who see you as a burden, they don't get to write your story. You do. I'm Evelyn Foster. I was used. Then I was underestimated. And now I sit on a porch swing with strong coffee, a full heart, and the kind of peace that can't be stolen because I built it myself. Now, tell me, what would you do if someone tried to erase you? Share your story in the comments below. And if you've ever clawed your way back from betrayal, I want to hear it. I'll leave 2 other stories on the screen. Both favorites from this channel, both about women who refused to stay invisible. Thank you for spending time with me. I hope you found a little piece of yourself in mine.